Back again to Roundtable. I'm Bob Orr from the Press Club of Southwest Florida. And today we're talking about local TV news and some of the issues facing our area broadcasters. We're joined by two TV news executives who oversee the day-to-day operations of the news departments here in Southwest Florida at our TV stations. Tom Doerr is the news director at Wink. Tom, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you, Bob. Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Happy that you joined us. Also joining Tom will be Tim Klutsarits. He's the assistant news director for Waterman, running both of the operations at NBC2 and ABC7. Tim, good to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Bob, for having me here today. Appreciate it.
Also, one of your colleagues, Sarah Zach from Fox 4, had intended to be here, but something came up at the last minute, and we all know the news business, so we gave Sarah a pass, and we'll catch up with her down the road. Now, we've got some great panelists today to help ask the questions from our club. Frank Cipolla, who spent 38 years, more or less, as a radio and TV reporter, mostly around New York. Frank, welcome.
Thank you, Bob, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Along with Frank, we have Judd Cribbs. He is a former broadcaster. You probably know he now teaches the next generation of journalists at Florida Gulf Coast University. Judd, good to see you.
Thanks, Bob. Looking forward to this.
And finally, but not last, certainly, Delia Diambra. She's the former investigative reporter for NBC2, also a podcaster, the producer and host of Counterclock. Very good piece, by the way. Welcome, Delia. And I'll tell you what, why don't you just get us started today?
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to start off with a question for both of the news directors that we have on. And it's something that I think a lot of people that aren't in news don't know is behind the scenes, and that's the relevancy of an assignment desk. As we move forward and evolve as local newsrooms, I've seen some, assignment desks be removed from the news operation. Reporters are becoming their own assignment desk. How relevant is an assignment desk now as we kind of see local news sort of changing some of their formats and going into digital and creating new content?
I can't imagine a newsroom without an assignment desk, personally. I hadn't heard that anybody had removed their assignment desk before. I certainly heard of people in bureaus who began working out of their homes, but the assignment desk is your eyes and ears of the news operation.
Yeah.
Sure. And for us, we have redesigned it, and we do not have a traditional assignment desk anymore. What we've focused in on what we call the bridge now, and while that may not be the most original name for an assignment desk, essentially it is the thought process behind it is, as we accelerate on how we get news out into the world, it's not a world where we wait for 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock to get the news out there. It's about running this 24/7 operation. And, frankly, a lot of how we get news out comes through the digital space, and making sure that the digital team members are at the front line of that acquisition of content and then the distribution of content is kind of where we've established ourselves as far as trying to innovate and come up with new ways of distribution.
So it's just a follow-up. So it's not just, following that, what's coming in from the scanners anymore, but it's more so what's being tweeted about, what are, people engaging with our content, what are things breaking. I feel like it's really big, I'd assume, in the social media space, in the space where your listeners are able to engage with that content. Is that kind of really along the lines of that focus?
Sure. And, the social listening aspects of our job has changed tremendously. I'm old enough to remember, the phone was the most important thing that came into your newsroom. And while it is still important, I would tell you the amount of phone calls that come into a newsroom on a daily basis is from when I started in 1996, I would say it's down probably 90%, 95%. That phone used to ring all the time. And now we get as much off of social media platforms, just as far as, something's happening at this intersection, or something's happening in Estero, or something, something along those lines. We hear as much off of that as we do anything else these days.
Just to add to what Tim said, the desk is still also very involved in document searches and document requests, and we still make beat calls because the human-to-human interaction usually is better than any kind of connection you can make digitally. At least it usually is. So, I mean, there are still some of the traditional functions that are applied to the desk.
Absolutely. Nothing beats the personal relationships. That's still very key to our business.
Yeah. Well, I'll pitch it over to Frank, I think, is taking up our next question, right, Bob?
Go
Yes.
ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Delia. I am curious, gentlemen. And first of all, I know Tom from the press club. Tim, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you. Maybe post-pandemic we can do so.
Sure.
But my question is with regard to the pandemic, post-pandemic, what will we see the newsroom like? We see a lot of reporters now working from home. They prefer the Zoom. They don't necessarily want to do the commute. They're using their own cars. And I'm wondering how much of that will remain post-pandemic, because it works well, it's efficient, it saves money, quite honestly. So I'm wondering if we'll ever go back to that situation in which all the reporters meet in an editorial meeting and are not meeting via Zoom as they are now.
Well, our reporters, actually, they're all working out of the newsroom now, and they've been back in the newsroom since August. I think the pandemic really taught us a lot about, things we didn't know before. A year and a half ago, if you had said you're going to produce newscasts from home, I would have been highly skeptical that would work. We found out that a lot of things can work, but so I think it's taught us a lot. I think it's also taught us a lot about safety lately. Safety out in the field. But our reporters are, working out of the newsroom. They don't go to the morning meeting anyway. It would just take too long, for everybody to be there. They put their pitches in before that, and really only the managers meet, and the meeting's only about 30 minutes long on a daily basis. So it really hasn't changed that much. We built a brand new newsroom, and we had 6 people working to a dog bone, we call it, because the desks are shaped like dog bones. So we call the newsroom the kennel. But because of social distancing, we've had to spread people out. So we have this big newsroom, and we have a lot of unused workspaces that I hope will, become occupied again. But I don't really see it changing that much. But in an emergency, and especially in the case where we would have to abandon the building for some reason, hurricane, flooding, whatever, we've certainly learned a lot about being able to operate, out of multiple remote locations. The one problem with the pandemic has been, and people working remotely, is it isn't the same effect as being in a newsroom. When something happens and the verbal exchange that goes on, they're not a part of that. And so there is some missing communication that goes along with that is really very valuable. And especially when you're communicating with the desk, the digital team, as well as, the broadcast side of things.
And I completely agree with Tom on that point. That's that internal newsroom, stuff, the little chatter that goes on. That stuff is very important to keep everyone honest. Between producers and executive producers, and reporters, and anchors, and sometimes it's much easier to have that. I heard it from this person here in the newsroom, and now I can incorporate it into my story instead of going through text and email and all that sort of stuff. So that has been sorely missed. We also have been back in the building though for months at this point. And for us, it's streamlined some processes that I think we will not be going back in some ways. In other ways, I look very much forward to having a reporter actually sit in front of me and pitch. There's something about having to sell your story that I think is good, especially for some of the younger journalists in our room, and having to understand what works and what doesn't. Time, the one beauty of our business is we're all very adaptable, and we all have to be able to adapt to the changing ways. And I am quite certain that none of us knew what we were getting ourselves into a year plus ago, but we've overcome and we've adapted, and we continue pushing forward.
Well, like a good reporter, I have a follow-up question, if
Sure.
I may. You're absolutely right. You bump into the salesperson and they say, hey, did you see what happened here? And that spurs an idea for a potential story. Or you bump into somebody else, and that interaction is just so invaluable. But I think, and maybe you can concur or disagree, I think a lot of people are getting used to seeing the news anchor at his home with a green screen, throwing it to his co-anchor who's at her home with a green screen, and the weatherman, and so on and so forth. Just as a bottom line question, and we all work on margins, it is the news business. Do you foresee some of these investors saying, why do we need these buildings when we can have the weather person at his home or her home in a basement somewhere with a green screen? It's more convenient for them. I don't think the viewer really cares whether or not he's in studio or she's in studio. So do you think any of that will remain? Will the weather person maybe stay home and permanently stay home? What will remain once we're done with the pandemic?
I think it could. I mean, and you don't have to look very much further than the newspaper business, right? I mean, you have seen that world, change here, not only locally, but, nationally as well. And, going to smaller facilities, and you don't need to do it the same way you did it before. And TV stations are much the same, but, that being said, viewers have a certain experience that they are accustomed to. I would say that, I think viewers have been very, very willing and able to do it on the short term, understanding the situation that's been around, but I don't see over a long-term basis how that can continue. Our customers, the viewers, are always expecting bigger, better, newer, faster, and all those things. And while we've been able to get away with some green screens and some live shots out of living rooms, I don't think long-term it's very viable.
Just to add to what Tim said too, maybe we overvalued production values, somewhat, that we needed it to be crystal clear and the picture had to be perfect. People primarily listen to broadcasts more than they watch, but we fall in love with, certain production techniques that give pacing to to a newscast and give some flash to it and all. And I think the pandemic has told us that, the typical consumer that we're used to, they're dealing on social media and the web, and they're looking at video quality of all different sorts, and they're not looking at necessarily high production values. So I do think it's given us, a little relief in the fact that we won't, I like to say a producer's standards rapidly deteriorate the closer you get to air, and when there's all fuzz in the picture and everything, and the engineer says, that's not airable, and I say, looks good to me, we're going to take it. That kind of thing. I think this is where we are now, that we don't really have to, overemphasize the idea that it's got to be perfect. As long as the information is good, as long as people can understand it.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. I'm going to throw it to my colleague, Judd.
Great, thanks, Frank. Gentlemen, let me ask this kind of to go off what Tom said. You have all these online sources now for state news, national, international. Local news, it's still TV and newspaper, the best sources for, hyper-local news. With newspapers having a tough time, what are your thoughts about ways to increase the local coverage with all the hours of news you have, devoting more airtime to local coverage?
There are some people in our business that believe that because of the way people are trained today and because of technology, it'll take fewer people and cost far less to produce news. I really disagree with that. I think it actually takes more people. If you're going to cover the news, you've got to have people who are able to go out in the community. And, I think, not speaking for Tim, but just as an observer of, our competitor, we're both blessed with really great resources, and we have people that are able to go out, and a lot of stations don't. The staff here at Wink is actually larger than the staff that I had in Chicago. Go figure. But as we expanded news, and the news is relatively cheap to produce and all, and you've got the studio and you've got anchors. If they're anchoring, 3 hours, have them anchor 4 hours, whatever that may be. But a lot of people haven't really thought about the fact you can expand news, but you also have to expand your ability to be able to news gather. Otherwise, you may as well just take one show and just requeue it and just keep rolling it over and over again. So Judd, it takes people. People are they're our source for gathering news, and I also, you mentioned the newspapers. I think the newspapers have lost a lot of their influences. So I think there are opportunities on the local level. 72% of the people in this market watch local news at least 3 to 4 times a week, Monday through Sunday. And it is the #1 source of local news information in Southwest Florida. So we already have a pretty good audience as it is. I think we're in an unusual situations with with both papers in the market being what they are. And being in the state that they are, we actually have an opportunity to expand our coverage, do more, and really kind of use, from an editorial standpoint, really sort of use the stations as a platform, to create a public agenda the way newspapers used to.
And I'll echo what Tom said here. I came from St. Louis, and I have a much larger staff than I ever had in CBS affiliate in St. Louis. And we both are blessed with being able to have a large staff that will cover large swaths of the community. And I will tell you, I believe the opportunity is not to go national, but is to dive deeper local. We dive deeper here locally at a TV station than I think most other markets do. And I think that's a good thing, quite honestly. I think being able to really focus in on the 6 counties of Southwest Florida is much more beneficial to our viewers and our customers. And I assume our research is the same as Tom's. And, people see true value in that. And they see us as the place to go to for news, and realizing that our opportunity is not covering, what President Trump did or President Biden did. Our value is what's going on in Fort Myers, what's going on in Cape Coral, what's going on in Collier County. And that's where our survival is based. Our survival is not based on what happens in Washington, D.C. or New York City.
All right, thank you. Quick follow-up. What we were talking about before with, the green screens at home and the pandemic type of production. Do you see any way to incorporate that into the post-pandemic local coverage, just to lessen like driving around time and lessen having to go here and there? I mean, is there a way to incorporate these ideas to kind of boost the infiltration of these local neighborhoods as far as the coverage goes?
The most important value you have in local television is being able to be live somewhere with something going on behind you. Taking the viewer from their couch or their phone and transporting them to wherever the news is. Our biggest value is being live. Our biggest value is taking somebody on an experience to somewhere, and sitting, essentially being in a green screen in the offices here in Fort Myers, or being in a green screen in an apartment in Bonita Springs. That's no value to the viewer. The value to the viewer is being live somewhere, or taking them somewhere where the news is actually happening.
Well, thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Yo, go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is, it kind of bounces off what you guys said about staff size and just the amount of, staff that you have and resources that you have. But one of my big questions is, how does local news, as you guys have experienced it in your careers and as you're experiencing it now, how does it handle the frequent turnover of reporters, producers, even anchors? I think a lot of times, when I was growing up watching news, I saw these legacy anchors, these anchors that had been at my local news station forever. And sometimes that's still the case, but a lot of times I feel like there's more and more new familiar faces. And that's one thing that when I was in the industry, I got a lot, which is it feels like you guys, reporters walk in the door and then walk out. So how is it that your operations and local news as a whole can retain good quality talent that does solid reporting, and it isn't just there to be there a few months and then walk out?
That's a great question, because that is a really big challenge, especially with reporters, producers, and photographers. We have a reasonable amount of stability with the anchors, but the type of, for what the market will pay, it's a 50-something market, it's only going to pay so much. So, and everybody coming in knows that an opportunity elsewhere, they might be able to make, twice as much, 3 times, even 4 times more. And that's kind of difficult to compete with. So for the scale of news that we do, to meet that scale and the number of people that we have, there is some disadvantage, to that. We have to do a lot of recruiting, and it is a big challenge. We're very fortunate when people want to stay for a second contract or they want to extend their contract, but it's a tough situation. Thankfully, in our case, we have very experienced managers here, and our frontline talent are very good, and probably could work anywhere. And, Lois has been here close to 30 years, and Chris has been here over 20 years. So those are just two examples of the stability, that we have that way. So that helps. But, getting and retaining people is a big challenge.
Sure. And, and a lot of this is beyond, myself or Tom's control. It's a lot of market pressures, and the market pressures of being in the 50s is not the same as being in the Chicago or St. Louis, in that, at that level, there are jobs that pay well enough that you want to stay there. And what I think is going to eventually happen in this market as we continue to climb in population is we are going to go from a transition market, where we are the AAA affiliate filling in all of the jobs at the, in the top 20 and top 30 markets. And as we start ascending, I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more stability. I think you're going to start seeing, theoretically, the market should even itself out. And there will be people who will be able to stay or want to stay longer than one contract term. But the realities, again, for the reporters and producers, is we're getting them at such a young age that they're going to want to expand their wings and try to get up to a top 20, top 10 network type job.
I think just a follow up is, as for young journalists or people that are coming in, with a year and a half, 2 years of experience, when they do arrive at a station, your market size, how does the local news station use that as an opportunity to not only fill the job, right, but be able to, use this as an experience for that employee to get better and better? I mean, and to continue to do good work and to be a good team player, right? Because even if they go from that market to a huge market from that, they might crash and burn. And so what are ways that as a station that you guys try and say, here is what good reporting is, model after this, seek after this, but you're also writing them a paycheck and you expect them to do their job. So how is that balance?
Actually, that's a really good question. And, the issue is really being able to offer somebody more to come here. So maybe they're coming here not for the salary per se, but they're coming for the experience. We, about 4 years ago, I changed the way we work with our reporters, and we divide them into two groups, and we have two people who serve as managing editors. And so each of those reporters has a manager that is a touchstone for them all the way through the day. Before, we used to make assignments, and then the executive producers would split up who was going to report to them during the course of the day for story development, for script approval, all the things that go into that. And what would happen was you'd have a relatively young reporter, and one day their manager would be A, and the other day their manager would be B, and the other manager would be C, and it was really just inconsistent. And so it just occurred to me that if you have the same person and that person tracks their progress and is with them every step of the way, from story conceptualization to story pitches, story development, the news gathering, pre-publication script approval, and they're required to work with them for a half an hour every week in coaching and mentoring, that we can then demonstrate to people coming in that you will grow here, you will get better. And then we can look at and say, okay, of the last 5 reporters that have left here, 2 of them are in San Francisco, 3 of them are in Phoenix. They've gone to good places. So we are, why not sell the fact that we are a bounce market, and, you come here, you get the experience, you build up your calluses, and if you want to go someplace else, you're probably going to have a really good chance at going to a really good place and making a really good salary.
Absolutely. And this market has turned into a terrific feeder market. I'll pat myself on the back here a little bit and pat Tom on the back as well. I mean, people who are coming out of this market are ready for the top 20 and top 10, markets right now. And that's not because they come in here ready, because God knows, you know, I've lost a lot of hair and, you know, trying to, you know, train and teach. And this is absolutely a place where training and teaching is not only expected, but it's the culture, because there's not a single person, and I think I'll speak for Tom here too. I don't think there's a single person that we hire as a producer or a reporter who's a finished product. They are a long way from it when they come walking in the door. Now, the expectation is we'll get them there, and the question is how long is it going to take? But we try to hire good people, and you know, we invest. We invest in our training. You know, we take the time to do it. We understand that coaching is very important in what we do, and frankly, we're failing our employees if we're not giving them that coaching and training that they need every single day.
Can I invoke moderator privilege here, Delia, and follow on that, because it hit a topic I wanted to ask both Tim and Tom about. So you say Tim, you say when your people leave this market, they're ready for the top 10, top 20, whatever. What kind of talent are you finding, and what are the areas of strongest skills, weakest skills? Like the people that are walking in your door as applicants, are they ready for a 50s market?
In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. And just within the interviewing process, you know, that's kind of what I'm poking around on, because anybody can, not anybody, but, you know, by the time they're getting to us, you know, odds are they can get a halfway decent reel put together. And, you know, that's a nice 5 to 10 minutes, and that's great. But it goes much past that. You know, is that person coachable? Is that person intelligent? Is that person somebody we think they can grow? Those are the three most important questions I have to come away with. And if that answer is not yes for all of them, they're not somebody I'm really looking for. And, you know, you can, it's a very intangible thing. You know, it's not like there's a checklist that says absolutely this person's 100% going to make it, because I have hired people where I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to be a star, and it just never quite happens. And
so Tom, what kind of skills do you see that, let's take both sides of the coin. What are the best skills that walk in your door, and what areas do you think are the most lacking across the board?
So the best skills are, you know, a lot of people are coming out of universities and they know how to shoot, edit, write. They can report, you know, they're all in one as MMJs, because that's what they're training everybody, you know, to do nowadays. So actually the skill level is, you know, not bad. I mean, there's a lot to work with there, and a lot to grow. And I think I think in both cases, you know, whether it's, you know, with Tim's shop or our shop, we've been able to recruit some pretty good people coming in the door that have a lot of potential. And that's what you're trying to project, is if they, you know, they do the work and they listen, and they, you know, they want to be more than be on TV, but they actually want to be journalists, you know, that they can grow. The thing that is lacking is it is very difficult to find producers. And when we go to college campuses to recruit, you go into a class for reporting and there'll be 30 people. You go into a class for producing and there'll be 4. Some schools don't even offer anything, you know, with regard to producing. And so I think that's an area that really needs focus, you know, at the university level, to get more people going into it. Everybody I know, from, you know, New York to Harlingen, Texas, I mean, we are all looking for producers. Finding good producers is a really tough thing. The other one is no one is teaching photojournalism like they used to. And so there are not many people that are interested in picking up a camera and shooting and editing for a living. You know, that seems to be, you know, an area that is not paying much attention. We have we've recruited some reporters that are like excellent photojournalists, and they edit really well. But we need photographers, and we need photographers for all the reasons you might think, but we also need photographers for safety reasons, because sending people by themselves to, you know, cover the news, and some stations, you know, even have their reporters, you know, doing their own live shots. So they're shooting their own live shots, reporting their own live shots, and tuning in their own live shots. And that might be okay for some assignments, but especially lately where there's been more violence and more threats against journalists, it's not as safe out there as it once was. And sometimes, having a marked vehicle or a mic flag and the camera and that equipment, you're a target. So we need photographers, as much as anything, is to just send 2 people to an assignment for the sake of safety.
We've got a lot of young aspiring journalists on the call, and I want to get to some of their questions and some other questions, but let's give the panel one more crack. Frank, you've got something you want to go with?
Yeah, one of my pet peeves, gentlemen, in this particular market is there's a lot of handsome young men and beautiful young women, and I watch the news and they're all terrific. However, the pet peeve for me, however, is often the writing is just not where it should be. I mean, I break down every story when I'm listening to it, and the simple things of who, what, when, and where sometimes are missing. I'm wondering if you have dedicated writing classes, because to me, I would rather have a reporter who knows how to tell a story and write it well than have somebody who looks really good on camera. And even in the market in New York, we had some old style reporters, and they weren't handsome and they certainly weren't beautiful, especially in their later years. And I'm not making a derogatory comment. I'm just saying that's the way it is as we get older. But they were just excellent writers. Do you have dedicated writing classes? Because to me, that's everything. If you can tell the story and write it well, that means more to me than anything.
Well, I would say writing is the biggest deficit. Going back a question here, writing is the biggest deficit that I see coming out of college. I see a lot of writing for essays and not a lot of writing for broadcast out of especially producers coming in. And some of that is frankly learned. I think writing is a very difficult subject to master to begin with, and then to do it with news writing is an even more specialized art. But yes, absolutely, writing is a daily conversation in this shop. We are constantly, between headlines and teases and actual stories and packages, and I mean, from top to bottom, writing is the number one thing that is worked on, within this building, just because it is, you're right, because it is so important to everything we do. If the writing's not there, I don't care how great the pictures are, if the words don't match up, it's really tough to communicate to viewers.
If I may just interject before we go to Tom, I notice a lot of writing in this market is almost verbatim from the press release they get from the police department, which just drives me crazy, with words like perpetrator and deputies on the scene. And my favorite is the suspect poses no immediate threat to the neighborhood. Who knows? I wonder. It's not real enough for me. It's not a person talking with me. Chris does a very good job at Wink and some of the other anchors in this market, but it's really not the way people speak. And Tom, maybe you can speak to that.
We do. Well, first of all, Frank, we do workshops on writing, and we do a series of workshops on headlines. We have one tomorrow morning at 8:30 and 1:30. So, I mean, we do work on that. It is, as Tim says, the writing is a craft, and you only get better at it by writing a lot, and you have to have somebody who's going over your copy all the time. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an issue. It's something that, that's executive producers go over all the copy, the producers first, then the executive producers go over all the copy. And we do a lot of we all do a lot of news in this market. So, some copy gets through that is pretty choppy. Or it may contain a lot of journalese. We've tried to eliminate a lot of the, sort of internal marketing phrases that you see in writing that, also I think just kind of jam up a newscast. And I don't think it's just wasted words, a lot of ways. It is a big challenge. But I do think that, over time, people get better at it, but there's the cure for bad writing is to sit and write all day and have somebody and say, this is great and this is crap, and critique it through, and learning to write conversationally. Another thing that, associated with this also is somebody who reads let's say you read a wire story and then putting it down and really understanding the emotional essence of what that story is as well. What are the three things about that story? And what is it that is going to relate to somebody, sitting at home is part of the challenge of kind of teaching them all that. But
Okay, so let's do this. Judd, do you have a question to follow up on the preparation side of students in school now? Because we talked about that. If you do, that's great. Let's fire with that, and then we're going to go to some of the audience questions.
Well, we do teach writing classes. I agree with Tim and Tom. Writing is the number one thing we're stressing because you have to be able to tell a story rather than just like regurgitate facts from an event. And so our classes are steeped in writing. We try and really get them to write a lot. And I see we have about 7 or 8 of our students here, which I'm really happy to see. And so, yeah, Bob, if we can have them chime in, that would be great.
Okay, we're going to get to them. Before we do that, and just raise your hand if you got something to ask. I know we have a couple questions in the pipeline, though. Jay Newman, if you would unmute yourself, fire away.
Yeah, Tim and Tom's shops, from my observation, do an outstanding job in the current environment. But I guess my concern is with the future and viability of local television news. It's pretty apparent that the strategies of some of the networks, Paramount, CBS, NBC, with Peacock, is to go directly to the consumer on streaming platform. Cable is just shedding cord cutters every day. Over the air in most markets is negligible. How do you survive with a viable operation 10, 15 years down the line when you don't have a lead-in, you don't have a network prime or a daytime for a promotional or branding platform?
Jay, that is a great question because that's something I think about all the time. And I have years ago when I was working for CBS in Dallas, Leslie Moonves was the chairman of the company, and he came and he had a meeting, and he was speaking to the employees at CBS 11, and he comes in and one of the first things he says, and he said this other places, but to actually be in a meeting with all your colleagues, he comes in and says, we don't need TV stations anymore. And the original purpose of television stations was really as a distribution system for the networks. So I think you could turn that around and say, we don't need networks anymore. We need news services to be able to get news, but we're programming over 13 hours of news a day, as it is. So maybe that lead-in program or that syndicated program that you want to buy, it really isn't as important, to us now as it once was, because we could just as easily directly, stream satellite and cable the same way the networks do. I think there will always be a need for local news. And 1,500 newspapers or more have gone out of business in the last 10 years in the United States. I mean, there are many, many news deserts. We have an opportunity to, at least in Southwest Florida, be able to be a source of news. I think about that all the time. And if CBS, turned off their signal today, I really would not be too intimidated by that. Instead, I would just do news around the clock.
Can you sell local news in a streaming environment on a subscription basis in the future, do you think?
That's a good question. That's above my head. I think, that's something that I don't really think that much about. And instead, I do think, though, that the opportunity for local advertisers to advertise their services on a local channel that is containing local news, I think that's going to have a lot of value to people. So I do think that it's economically viable. And I think that, I'm really excited about the possibility that that's just one of those things that I'm just not fazed about. Like,
Tim, do you want to add to that, and then we're going to move on to a couple more questions. And I want the students to get some questions ready here because we'll be coming to you next. Go ahead, Tim.
Absolutely, and I echo Tom's sentiment. I on a long enough timeline, there will be at least one station here or two stations here that will be 24-hour news. And
I agree.
Interesting.
there is enough advertiser interest and enough interest in local news, and that's where we spoke about diving down and not diving up. The more local news product we can put out, there is great benefit to that. And I have been continually shocked at the amount of over-the-air viewers that continue to increase. And as cord cutting has gone on, the amount of people who are actually watching off of an old school antenna has gone up significantly over the past couple of years. And I think there's still a lot of value to that.
Iris sure had an interesting question, I think, about the coverage of COVID. Iris, if you will unmute the mic.
I'm unmuted. What did you see as the role of your respective stations in terms of helping the public during the pandemic?
Well, I think for us, it was always about getting the best information out there as we could, and none of us have degrees in biomedicine, so this was a great learning experience, I think, for everyone within the industry. I couldn't have told you what a variant was 12 months ago, I guarantee it. But now I have to have a little bit of understanding of some of those things. But as this has gone on, it has gone from being a numbers game and trying to figure out how bad it is, to actually trying to help people out. And at the very core of what journalism is supposed to be is about informing the public of where they can get vaccines, how they can get vaccines, what they can do to keep themselves safe. And I think we've done a pretty good job globally as a market, in keeping the public informed and what they need to know to get through all this.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, go ahead.
No, I echo what Tim just said. Absolutely.
All right, I just want to look around. Thank you, Iris, and thank you, Tim and Tom. The students, now bear with me because this Zoom thing I'm not particularly good at. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll call on you, and then if you would identify yourselves and unmute your mic. This is a good chance to talk straight to the guys that run the local news operations. I see Emma Heaton. Emma, if you'd unmute your mic, identify yourself and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Emma Heaton. So I am a senior at Florida Gulf Coast University. Professor Cripps has been my professor for the past 3 years. He's a great professor. He's taught me a lot of writing skills, but I did want to ask you, what is the key to success when communicating to the public, and what are a couple of writing tips that you would recommend future journalists use while reporting?
As far as the writing, I'll go backward first. As far as the writing, always remember that you're talking to a person and not talking to 10,000 people. The more you can personalize your writing and thinking about who you're speaking to as an individual viewer, instead of broadcasting from the mountaintop, as I like to say, it will help you, from the writing perspective.
And be conversational in your writing. Write like people speak. Get to the point. Don't beat around the bush. Be direct. Write in the active voice. There's some of them. What was the first part of the question again? Sorry.
What is the key to success when communicating to the public?
I think it's being clear as possible, and being absolutely clear and understandable. People should be able to tune into a newscast and be able to understand. People expect an anchor, to be an interpreter of events. And so they need to be able to tell a story in a very simple, clear way so that they understand. I think there are times when that role is that they have to be reassuring to the public, especially when conveying emergency information or important information. It's really pretty simple. It's just getting a sensibility of what your audience is about and being able to talk to them in a very clear, understandable way.
All right, thank you, Emma. Anybody else among the students here have a question for Tim or Tom or both? Just raise your hand. Katie Fogarty, go ahead.
Yeah, this is for both. So what is the best advice that you can give me and my peers as we're looking to get jobs in the journalism industry in just a few years?
I think the two things I suggest to anybody coming out is, one, gain experience before you ever leave college. The best thing I ever did, I was a board op at KMOX Radio in St. Louis 2 years before I ever graduated from college. And that taught me so much by being in a newsroom, being in a facility that is 24/7 and teaching you the ways of the business and the ways of communicating. The second thing I would tell you is, don't be afraid to make the jump in the pool. If you have an opportunity, take it. Don't wait for the quote unquote perfect opportunity. Wait for get in on a good job, but make sure that first job is somewhere where they're going to teach you and train you. Make sure that they're going to invest in you. Make sure that they're going to they're going to work to make you better, because you're not you graduate college and you're ready to take the world over, but none of us are ready, and we need to be able to get out there and make some mistakes, but also be in a place that's going to nurture you a little bit.
And also be willing to go wherever it is that you have the best opportunity. It may not be someplace that's top of mind for you, but going someplace that maybe is far from home or on the other side of the country, or for a job that doesn't really pay very well, but it is a job that is going to give you the kind of experiences that you need to be a successful professional. Go for it.
So Tom, one of the people on the call texted a question to me, and it follows up on something you said. It says, if universities really don't offer many courses to prepare producers, you talked about the lack of producers. What
Yes.
would you suggest students do on their own to learn producing skills to help prepare?
Well, first of all, a lot of the curriculum, a lot of the courses that are offered at universities are offered because that's what the students are demanding, and that's not necessarily the best thing for the industry. And I realize that, in some of the schools, they need a lot of kids in their college of journalism, to be successful. And for example, there are a lot of kids right now who are majoring in sports. Sports is a very big thing. We get a lot of resumes from reporters that they want to do sports. Well, we don't really do that much sports. And a lot of stations don't do it as much anymore because there's just too many other places you can go for it. So first of all, encouraging them to start a program for that. And a lot of these schools, they do have their own form of newscasts, so they produce their own newscasts. And so, be the one who volunteers to produce all the time, as opposed to being the one who wants to anchor.
Also, as we're talking here, Robbie Spencer, Robbie, why don't you ask this question if you've got your microphone, because it's a good one, or make your point. He talks about freelance opportunities and development.
Sure, yeah, I graduated from FGCU in 2012, and I wanted to stay local. So part of what I did was freelanced for quite some time. So that's a great way to kind of find the right fit for you while looking for a full-time opportunity. My long-term goal is to find a full-time job, but there just wasn't much out there. And then after about like 9 months, I took on a role as an editor of a newspaper on Sanibel, and that was just one of many stops for me since then. So almost 9 years later.
I think it's a great option, and it's a good observation. Mark Young, I know, has an interesting question. Mark, why don't you go ahead?
I'm going back to the discussion about digital and social media. And besides wondering which drives the news when something happens, does it go first to the producer, or does a digital desk say, get out there and send me something? And then of course, it's the fact checking, which is always a problem. But my other question got to do with, lately, more and more reporters and anchors especially have been fired or reprimanded for posting things on their own social media sites that conflict with perhaps what they should be doing as news. I see Tom shaking his head.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, when you are an anchor or a reporter, you are accepting the responsibility that you are also an ambassador for the television station that you work for, and that you should never do things to compromise your objectivity, you know, or to take sides on an issue, unless it is an issue that you're siding with the angels and everybody else, you know, understands that it's okay to, you know, to be on that side. So you know, the social media is a dangerous playground, and you know, it's, you know, you're responsible for when you hit that post button. It's your responsibility. But we have a, you know, integrity is easier kept than regained, and you know, you always want to conduct yourself in a way that you're putting your best foot forward. And as a journalist, and a journalist is a lifestyle. It's a different kind of business than, you know, than any other. In that, you know, you've accepted the fact that you're going to be somebody that has ethical standards, that has, you know, this curiosity about things, but is not going to necessarily share your opinion, you know, with them. So great responsibility comes with that. So, and I think most adults, if they think about that, they should know better.
We have a question from Blake Bowen, and Blake, if you'll unmute and ask your question, but let me just say that unless there's another student question in the pipeline, we'll have Blake's question, and in the interest of time and to honor these guys that are still working in the news business, we'll have the panel one last wrap through and we'll be done. Blake, go ahead.
Hey, my name is Blake Bowen. I'm a senior here at FGCU. My question is, obviously a lot of us are students and we're going to be new reporters going into the field. So odds are our first marketplaces are going to be in cities that are completely foreign to us, new areas that we don't know anybody. So what's your advice to new reporters that are in new cities? What are places to find good stories? What are ways to find good stories and good sources in a place you know nothing about?
That's a great question. But the first thing I would say, that wherever you go, embrace it and get to know it as best you can. A good reporter is curious, and a good reporter will talk to people. A good reporter will, you know, seek will seek different sources of information, whether maybe they have a newspaper, maybe they don't. There certainly are social media sites where people will be posting things, but you've got to have this curiosity. And I would also, you know, who's the most experienced person in the newsroom or the most experienced persons in the newsroom? And I would pick their brain on a regular basis on, you know, to get ideas and to fit in. But you've got to make the most of it. And it is truly up to you. It's not going to, if you wait for it to come to you, it'll never show up.
Agreed. And my biggest piece of advice, and I say it here to our staff as well, make friends outside of the newsroom. You know, just hanging out on the weekend or hanging out in your free time with the other reporters in the newsroom is never going to tell you what a new community is about. It's, you know, playing in pickup basketball games. It's being in church groups. It's being in just whatever involvement you are into. Get into those kinds of places, because that's where the news happens. The news doesn't happen in the newsroom. The news happens out there in the world. And in finding that structure outside of the newsroom is the best place to find stories. So
last call here for any students that might take advantage. Okay, we got two, so we're going to indulge their patience. Summer, you go first. Please identify yourself and unmute your microphone.
Hi, so I am Summer. I am currently working on the production side at Wink, but I hope to hopefully transition into being a reporter. So my question is, the common myth I think that we hear, and maybe you can verify if this is a myth or not, that some of the reporters, or most of the reporters in the middle market, this is their second or third market, and they've started out at some of these smaller markets. Are you hiring people who just come out of college, or is there a requirement that they need to come from a smaller market? And if you are hiring those that are just coming out of college, what are some defining characteristics that they have that you are taking them even if they haven't come from a smaller market?
So we don't have any requirements that people, you know, have to come from a smaller market. And we have hired people out of school, and we do have a reporter trainee program. And we've had as many as 4 people in it at one time where they come directly out of school. And generally those students that are coming out of there, they have demonstrated at their university. Tim gave great advice a little earlier, saying, be involved in as many things on campus as you can be. And most of these candidates are people that participated in for the local newspaper, participated in the local newscast if the school produces one, as well as interning at other places, and then had some demonstrable work to show from that they learned, that that we can then begin to assess their potential, to grow. So we will certainly take the chance on somebody if they come out and they have, they're smart, they have a lot of self-confidence, they have really good writing skills and storytelling skills. I mean, we'll roll the dice.
Jordan Blake, quick question from you.
Yeah, mine was just a really quick one. My name's Jordan Blake. I'm a senior as well at FGCU. I also work with Summer in the production side at Wink. I was just wondering, as I'm starting to apply to jobs this month and getting my resume out there, what from you guys is, when you're looking for your first job, what is in an interview or something like that, what is something that you look for to hire? Like, what is the one thing that we should all be presenting ourselves when we go in for an interview?
I think for me, one of the, and this goes for any business, but tell me you want the job. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but tell me you want the job. Show me that you want the job. Tell me that, God, Waterman Broadcasting is the best place I've ever been, or Wink or wherever. But tell me you want the job. Show me that you care and have some passion for it. And again, that translates across every business. But I think that's one of the big things, is that you want to be here. I don't need to talk you into being here. It's about showing me that this is where you want to be, and you want to do the best job you possibly can.
And expressing that you want to learn as well, and do your homework. Know who you're talking to when, whoever the hiring manager is, when you're talking to them, know a little bit about them, and know an awful lot about the television station, and watch their newscast before, the interview. There's no excuse now. Everybody has a website. You can go and you can find out a lot about a television station. You can find out a lot about the men and women who work there. Their newscasts are streamed, so you can watch the newscast. You can get a good sense about what they're all about, so that you can go into an interview situation and be articulate about maybe some of the big stories that they've covered, how they've been handled, and certainly the experience of some of the other reporters, if you're going for a job like that, so that you know what you're talking about. Because guess what? That's what reporters are supposed to do, is dig and learn.
And real quick, Sam Romero, I know you had a question just the last minute over the transom, so go ahead, please.
Hi, so my name is Samantha Romero. I also work with Summer and Jordan in production for Wink. And I realized that, we're also journalism majors at FGCU. We've realized that the major is more paper-based rather than TV. And a lot of people have had that obstacle where they're not really finding that broadcast-based writing skills, stuff like that. We have classes, but it's just kind of hard when we're trying to find that major. So what do you think is some of your advice when we're trying to learn in the workplace? Because I've learned a little bit from producers, but freshly coming out of college, graduating, what's your advice on learning all of that?
I'm glad we don't have a newscast on the air right now, with the number of people that are working here at Wink that are, on this Zoom call right now. But I think that, a number of things that you can do, offer to take a producer out to lunch, or after work, and, talk to them about their jobs and what they find challenging about their job, and learn as much as you can. You have to take a lunch break inside the building. Ask, we have, a lot of people here. I mean, ask them to join you in the pit, which was where we eat, and chat with them about the job. And then maybe when you have some time, ask Tim if you can come into the newsroom and say, show me your rundown, take me through through that. I'm sorry, Tim, I didn't mean you, Tim. I meant Tim Briggs, our production manager, who oversees our production crew. But just look for opportunities like that. or ask one of our producers to watch a newscast with you, at some point. I mean, there are all different ways that you can get into that.
Well, thanks to all the students for their questions. Some really interesting questions there. We really are out of time. Anybody on the panel, Delia, Judd, Frank, any last thought or question you have before we thank these gentlemen?
Yeah, just real quick. You're absolutely right. Internships are the way in. I know when I worked briefly at Fox 4, there were paid internships. My question to Tim and Tom is, what is the setup with regard to internships at your place? Are they paid, or are they, do you get credits for college if you do them?
Well, for us right now, we've shut down our internship situation just because of COVID. So we haven't had an intern in the building since March of last year. And until we get to a better place pandemic wise, we shut down all access essentially to the building to outsiders. As far as internships with us, we've always done it off college credit. It has always been the prerequisite for it. We don't do paid internships, but as long as there's college credit involved, then we're into the intern situation.
So we have some paid internships. Like Tim, we have not done anything since last March because of the pandemic. It's unfortunate. And, a lot of college kids right now have really been robbed of some really great experiences simply because of this, this virus that has really crippled, a lot of places. But we only do paid internships, so we don't have many interns. It's very competitive, to get into that, but we do pay them.
Well, I want to thank all of you for participating today in Roundtable. Of course, our thanks to our panelists, Delia, Frank, and Judd. And special thanks to our two guests, Tom Doerr from Wink and Tim Klutsarits from Waterman. Gentlemen, thanks very much for spending an hour of your busy time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great. Appreciate it.
And if you're watching this on our Press Club YouTube channel, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and also tell your friends about us, and then keep an eye out for the next Roundtable, because there will be one, and we'll see you then.